Hello and happy Sunday, everybody. As you can tell from the thumbnail, there is a lot going on, so expect some random pauses here and there as I actually figure out times for timestamps so people can jump around if they want, because I think this video is going to take a while. We got all kinds of stuff, actually tons of stuff that has come in the mail from all over the place. The first two things we are going to start off with, the first two are gifts from a friend of mine, the same girl who has provided many packs in Jank Pack Thursday. Actually recently provided the William Stout pack, but she every now and then I'll get a message from her saying, oh, by the way, expect something in the mail from eBay or something like that. And we're going to begin with this. This came, and this is, I'm going to just go out and say, inside this envelope is the autograph of the greatest Cypriot NFL player ever. That I don't know how many there have been, but I know he was from Cyprus and is the greatest of all time, and that would be in really, really heavily taped up. But we have Garo Yepremian. If anybody remembers him from the Dolphins, especially back in I think he played for the Dolphins for most of the 70s. Well, I shouldn't say think. I have it written down. But there we go. Undrafted in 1966. And this is another tick off of the country's list because I had no Cypriots, but now I do. I'm a fan of his story, and I just want to give you a little background. Born in Larnaca, Cyprus in 1944, died in 2015 at the age of 70. Let's see, he obviously was a kicker in the NFL, was undrafted in 66, played for the Detroit Tigers from 66 to 67, didn't do anything in 1968, took a year in 1969 to play for the Michigan Arrows of the Continental Football League. Never heard of that league. Got to look into that. Then back to the NFL, played for the Dolphins from 70 to 78. The Saints in 79, finished his career in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers in 1980 and 1981. Won 2 Super Bowls with the Dolphins and actually was part of the perfect 17-0 Miami Dolphins 1972 team. Was first team All-Pro 2 years, went to the Pro Bowl twice, led the league in scoring in 1971, and is a member of the 1970s NFL All-Decade team. And actually, fun fact, after he retired, he went on to make neckties. So I've been on eBay looking for a Garo Yepremian necktie because I kind of want one. Also, to go with kind of a weird safety thing, because I do have the autograph of the last NHL player to go to play without a helmet. Garo Yepremian was the last player in the NFL to be without a face mask. Not sure which year it was. I know I think it was maybe early 70s, but he was the last player registered to not wear a face mask, I should say. And this is awesome. It's an interesting way to send it. It's actually, it's inside the big sleeve with a top loader taped to the front of it for stability. But it works. The card looks great, and I am excited. You're going to sit right here because that came from her earlier this week. And actually what came earlier today, this is Saturday as I film this, is an early Christmas present, and I'm looking forward to it because it is a figure. Yeah, you can tell. Ultimate Radioactive. We got Toxie. Look how awesome Toxie looks. Oh, Toxie. The greatest superhero ever from New Jersey. And as she said to me, she's like, he may not be the hero we need, but he's the hero that we have. And that is quite true. And big fan of the Toxic Avengers. All the movies, the Toxic Crusaders series, and just Toxie in general. Like I say, shout out to New Jersey. And actually I'm going to sleeve him back up. That is actually rather fortuitous considering the next item up on the thing. So I'm going to pause here for a second, write down the time. It's almost exactly at 5 minutes. move Toxie off to the side, get reset for part 2 of 4. So hang on one second. Okay, we are back. Time is recorded. Toxie and Garrow are set to the side. Now, why I said this actually has to do with... actually, I just realized this is going to be a book, so I'm going to take the pack out from under there that was being used as support. Actually, no, I did it backwards. I'm going to add more to give a bit more height, because in this cardboard thing, and I did that just so I knew which way the book is actually facing, is the first ever graded comic slab that I have. The book itself originally came from Philtastic Comics and Art. I want to give him a shout out. I was actually in his live stream. It was earlier today, but yesterday as you're watching this. This book originally came from him, and he told me that the artist, the cover artist, was doing a CGC signing. And if you could send it in, it would get signed and graded and slabbed. Like, you know what? That sounds awesome. And I did check because I wanted to make sure. It came in the box like this, so I made the natural assumption that that was the top. So I turned it over and did a flip one of these, and I was like, okay, yes, there's the back. So now I have no idea what it is because, you know, I know CGC, they will, they send you actually an email of what's coming and what the grade is. Now, I know from other people's that the grade is in the top left. So here's the cover in question. It is Catwoman number 45, signed by the artist Jenny Friesen. And this came from Phil. And let's see if I can actually do that. Okay, yeah, there we go. We got Signature Series Catwoman number 45, signed by Jenny Friesen on 10/10/23. Well, that's awesome. They actually put the date. And, yep, there's all that. But now, the important thing... Actually, I'm going to debag it to try to get rid of the glare. Oh, that is so cool. Like I say, that is the first one. There's Jenny's signature right there. The cover looks great. And now, come on. It's not going to be a 10. I don't think I've ever actually seen a perfect 10.0. But in lieu of that, we have... Holy crap, we got a 9.8. Oh, yeah. Oh, that is awesome. That is really awesome. Oh, I like that. Man. That is really slick. So we're just going to sit that... Well, actually, that's the reason we're going to be moving stuff around. There, we'll prop that up a little more. There we go. Actually, maybe if I get one more thing in there, we can look at the grade while I finish this off. Yes! Look how good that looks. And it absolutely does. 9.8, signed, Jenny Friesen, Catwoman, number 45. And also, again, shout out to Phil, because very recently, Phil and Mrs. Tastic welcomed Baby Tastic number 2 into the fold. So congratulations to Phil and Mrs. Tastic. Now they have the full Philtastic 4. And on his stream, I guess Mama and Baby are home doing well, it sounds like, which is very awesome. So check out Phil down below. Make sure to sub him up. And just good guy, great artist, and now a fully fledged four-member family guy. Does that make sense? It does now. It does for a bit. But thank you, Phil. And this is awesome. Like, I've never owned a comic slab before. I'm enthralled by the giant slabs. I've seen some of the stuff that other people have, the bigger stuff that's slabbed, and it is amazing. And this is incredible. So, thank you, Phil, for the book and the heads up about that, because now it is a huge and awesome part of my collection, and I'm obviously going to have to get a readable copy of this. So I'm going to pause, put Catwoman off to the side, and then we're going to move on to the next one. So bear with me one second. All right, we are back. Next part is some mail that came completely out of the blue, this time from Joe Mansman. I was in a stream of Adam's Card Closet. Oops. 3 Good Ninjas fell over. What stream was it? I think it was after Styx Jeopardy. Adam was doing Guess Who again, and Joe Mansman was in the chat, and I see him in various chats often. And he says to me, "Hey, shoot me an email. I've got some stuff I'd like to send you." Just for no other reason than to spread the goodness of the card community. And now I'm very curious to see just what in the world is in here. We've got some old stuff. We've got eine letter. Let's see. Zach, these will fit your collection better than mine. See, and that's what's awesome. I want you to have them. God bless your friend Joe Mansman. Joe, I already, just from that letter, I know there's going to be something great in here, so thank you. Just thank you already. And let's see. So I'm guessing, obviously, just with that statement, I know he's a New York fan. There's going to be some Pittsburgh stuff in here, most likely. Yep. Ooh. What in the world here? New York Giants versus Pittsburgh Steelers, December 11th, 1966. Oh my God, that is in beautiful shape. And yes, okay, since he's right up there, it was 1966, which means more than likely the Giants pounded the Steelers because the Steelers didn't start getting good until about 1971-ish. Yeah, wasn't good. One of the favorites. I didn't obviously get to watch him because he played. I think he was retired by the time I was maybe 2 or 3. But Jack Ham, he was one of those guys. He was the guy that everybody was so focused on Jack Lambert in the middle that they forgot about Jack Ham on the side. And as the quote unquote, well, actually he kind of was because he was very soft spoken. The silent killer, he would come in and just, you wouldn't see him coming, but you would know he was there really, really quickly. Big fan of Jack Ham. I think he still does. He's still in the Western PA area, and I believe he does color commentary, or at least used to, for Penn State football. John Stallworth. And he was part of that famous 1974 draft where the Steelers drafted 4, but ended up with 5 of the 6 Hall of Famers that came in with the 1974 class. John Stallworth was one of them, actually right behind him. Another one, Mike Webster, he came in 74. And weirdly enough, right after him, Jack Lambert, who also came in 1974. It was Swan. It was Lynn Swan, John Stallworth. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. I think Lynn Swan was the first pick. Jack Lambert, I think, was the second. John Stallworth, they got third. Mike Webster, I think, came in the 4th or 5th round. Let's see if it actually says on the card. Come on. Acquired. Yeah, it just says acquired via draft. But he did come in 74. So it was Swan, Stallworth, Lambert, and Webster, and the one they got, the undrafted free agent they signed that recently ended up in the Hall of Fame, Donnie Shell. So that, to this date, is still the greatest draft class for one team ever. 5 Hall of Famers out of 6. Ultimately, we don't know. In the future, we might get another class, but for right now, 74 wins the day. Excuse me. Another Jack Ham. I wonder if he signs TTMs. I think he might. Jack Lambert does, but he charges a considerable amount simply because he just wants to be left alone. Like, that's it. He think he charges like $50 or $60 just in the hopes that people think it's too much and don't write to him to bother him, because he's a very weird dude. But I digress. More Steelers. Ooh. One of the few rookies in this class that right now I've been really, really excited for. Joey Porter Jr. on the Mosaic, rookie. Do not have any of him in an actual Steelers uniform yet. So there we go. He's given me hope. He's playing well when he can. We don't know what the Steelers are doing. We don't know. They're winning. You saw what I posted on Instagram. The Steelers are John Daly in those pants. Enough said. We got here Pittsburgh, AFC 31, Los Angeles, NFC 19. Oh, okay, so Super Bowl 14. That was the fourth. That one actually was in the 1979 season. And that year, the last time they did it, by the way, the Pirates won the World Series, which made the Steelers and the Pirates champions in two different sports in the same city in the same year. It happened again, was it 2009 or 2010? It was 2009. The Steelers and the Penguins. Steelers got the Super Bowl and the Penguins got the Cup. Speaking of the Penguins, I actually didn't plan that, but speaking of the Penguins, got Jake Gensel. I've been seeing him on a lot of cards, and I'm glad because I'm a big Jake Gensel fan. Now, you know this guy is good because Uncle Slappy actually likes him. Evgeny Malkin. He's one of the few Penguins that Slappy likes. This is the other one, Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby says, "Hello, Uncle Slappy." No, just kidding. He doesn't like Sid the Kid. Stretching for a score. Okay, so we got Webster there. 84. That would have been Randy Grossman. He was the tight end during the Super Bowl era. I actually went to high school with his daughter. Ironically. 60. I can't see the other numbers. But this would have been 1981. Stretching for a score, who would that have been? The Browns. The Browns can't catch a break. And I'm glad of it. Le Magnifique. Here's the other Penguin that Uncle Slappy really likes, but I certainly like him. Mario Lemieux. He has softened a bit because they are going, come February, they're going to be retiring Jaromir Jagr's number 68. And ever since Jagr left Pittsburgh to go to Philadelphia, Mario has carried a bit of a grudge. But it sounds like Mario's softening up, which is good because Jagr's jersey definitely deserves to be retired by pretty much everybody. Paul Coffey said, and this was the era, God bless Stadium Club, the era when I was going to hockey games in the early 90s, the amount of Hall of Famers on various teams that I got to see coming in and out of the old Civic Arena. It's staggering. Mark Recchi, here's another one. Got to see him a lot. Mario, I saw him play so many times. Jagr, I got to see his debut in 1990. Granted, 1990, he'd been playing hockey at the professional level for 4 years at that point and still continues to play it today. He's nuts. Brian Trottier, big fan of Brian Trottier. And when Jagr came in 90, they made that super team. I actually don't have any of these Mario cards, which is kind of weird, but big fan of Super Mario. Gord Dineen. Oh, there's a name out of the past. And it's on Pro Set, which is actually one of my favorite sets. 1990 hockey and football Pro Set was really the stuff that got me into collecting. And I know they're kind of looked at, more on the laughable side these days, but now, man, big fan of that and big fan of Gord Dineen. Here's the man, Jaromir Jagr, still playing over in the Czech Republic, and I think this year when he scored, he is now, including international play, the all-time leading scorer in the history of professional hockey, because he has played everywhere, forever. The man has been playing hockey at a professional level since 1986. There are a lot of people that weren't born when Jaromir Jagr started his career. And he's still going. The man is nuts, and we love him for it. Two more. Now, this name, John Nisby. I gotta think about this one. I have never heard of that name, John Nisby. When you run as fast, weigh as much as John does and can run as fast, you're sure of success in the pros. He can rock 'em and sock 'em in the line and charge downfield to toss earthquaking blocks. 230-pound guard. So we're talking, wow. You know what? I'm going to pause for a second because I actually need to figure out what year that card is. So 1 second. Okay, thanks to the internet, this card is 1960 tops. And one of the oldest cards I now have. However, wow. Wow, what in the world are you? Number 29 in a series of 240. Well, Ralph Kiner. I have never in my life seen anything like this. Whoa. I vote we're contrary to state laws. Offer expires December 31st, 1949. Okay, so this is a 1949 Bowman of Ralph Kiner. Other than the stuff that Tony Sensei Domino sent me of some old tobacco cards, this is hands down the oldest card that I actually have. I have never seen, I don't think I've ever, it's one of those like, kind of like with the 1960. Like you see pictures of them, but I've never actually seen them in person, and I've especially this. Wow. Wow, seriously, wow, Joe, man, that is, thank you. I never, let's just say this, I never would have expected anything like this. One, I didn't think anything, didn't even know what the set looked like. Because you see videos of other people doing Bowman sets of the full-size cards. That is phenomenal. Thank you, Joe. Seriously. And I've got some stuff lined up for you that actually came from an Adams sale that I have stacked away for you. But in all seriousness, that is amazing. Thank you. And he says it right there. They would fit your collection better than mine. I want you to have them. And that's part of what I do with this. Like if I pull anything like that and somebody wants to trade for it, I'm absolutely going to trade you for it. Because if it's somebody that you collect and somebody that you PC, please, that is what this whole community is about. And Joe, thank you so much. I'm going to pause here once again and then get reset up. And we've got one more thing to do before I let you guys go on Sunday and do all the wrap-up. So 1 second. All right, and we are back with the final segment of this massively long Sunday extravaganza, and it concludes, History by Mail is back. It is here for November, and I cannot wait to see what we got this time. All right, we're going to set the transcript down. We're going to take a look at the actual document. To H.R. Haldeman from Bill Sapphire. Do not know those names. July 18th, 1969. Okay, there we go. Space again. In event of moon disaster, fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. What in the... These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. They will be mourned by their families and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world. They will be mourned by a Mother Earth that dared send two of her sons into the unknown. In their exploration, they stirred the people of the world to feel as one. In their sacrifice, they bind more tightly the brotherhood of man. In ancient days, men looked at stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. In modern times, we do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. So was this I'm guessing this is the inevitable what happens if they don't come back press release. Others will follow, but surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, but these men were the first, and they will remain the foremost in our hearts. For every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind. Prior to the president's statement, the president should telephone each of the widows-to-be. After the president's statement, at the point when NASA ends communications with the men, A clergyman should adopt the same procedure as a burial at sea, commending their souls to the deepest of the deep, concluding with the Lord's Prayer. They actually planned. I mean, it makes. Look, especially with something like this, you kind of have to. You have to have a contingency plan. But they were going to give him a burial at sea in space. But now let's see exactly what we have. I think we've hit the nail on the head. However, we've got the memorandum in the event of a moon landing disaster, July 18th, 1969. The enclosed memorandum, prepared for President Richard Nixon by his speechwriter William Safire, lays out what Nixon should do if the Apollo 11 astronauts were left stranded on the moon. Think about that. That would be horrifying. Like, there's horrifying things in the world, but to be stranded on the moon, knowing you're not coming back, that would be up there. That'd be in the top one. Astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon on July 20th, 1969 on the Apollo 11 mission. Between 1969 and 1972, there were 6 successful manned missions to the moon, all from the U.S. and during Nixon's presidency. These 6 missions began with Apollo 11 and ended with Apollo 17. Apollo 13 was scheduled to land on the moon, but ended up as a lunar flyby. We've seen the movie, which actually was a very good movie. 24 U.S. astronauts have landed on the moon, 3 of whom made the trip twice, and 12 walked on its surface. There have, however, been numerous unmanned moon landings, the first of which was the Soviet Union's Luna 2 mission on September 3rd, 1959. Luna 2, was that the one with Laika, the dog? President Kennedy famously pledged in 1961 that a man would reach the moon by the end of the decade, and he did it by a few months, so nailed that one. A mere 6 months, before the decade's end, Apollo 11's historical moon landing was televised around the world, instilling awe and patriotism in Americans. Space exploration was seen as a way to advance the sciences, foster pride, demonstrate to the world the superiority of... oh, Jesus, and there it goes. That's what it has to boil down to. Of either communism or capitalism, and deliver a strategic victory in the Cold War as rocket research could be adopted for military uses. It has, and it did, and it has. Apollo 11 lasted mere 8 days, 3 hours, 18 minutes, and 35 seconds. Nothing is mere when you're in the doom of space. Launching from Florida's Kennedy Space Center on July 16th, the crew included Commander Neil A. Armstrong, Commander Module Pilot Michael Collins, and Lunar Module Pilot Edwin Buzz E. Aldrin, Jr. Did not know that E was his middle name. Where'd I go? I lost. 6 hours after landing on July 21st, Neil Armstrong became the first person to step onto the moon. That's a question. What time zone is the moon in? I mean, this is a serious question. Like the International Space Station, what time do they operate on? I actually don't know. I'm going to find out after this. Neil Armstrong became the first person to step on the moon, an event broadcast on live TV to a worldwide audience. He then made his famous pronouncement, "One small step for a man," and that's the thing. There was that little cutout. He didn't say man. He said a man. One giant leap for mankind. Armstrong's first step was televised live in 33 countries with an estimated 25 million viewers in the U.S. and millions more globally listening to radio broadcasts. Aldrin joined Armstrong 20 minutes later, and the 2 astronauts spent 2.25 hours outside the spacecraft and collected 47.5 pounds of lunar material. Meanwhile, Michael Collins piloted the command module Columbia alone in lunar orbit for 21.5 hours before Armstrong and Aldrin rejoined him. Now, here we go. This was the letter, the disaster scenario. The success of Apollo 11's mission may seem inevitable with the hindsight of the history and the ubiquity of the images of the moon landing. However, the mission's success was far from guaranteed. That is quite true. Nobody knew. I think, what was it? From the time Kennedy said it to the time they did it, there was less than a 1% chance of launching men into space and returning them alive. Or not into space, but to the moon and returning them alive. It's kind of impressive. In fact, White House and NASA officials quietly made plans for the possibility that the Apollo 11 lunar vehicle would not get back up to the mothership, leaving the men stranded and doomed to either starve to death or commit suicide on the moon. No offense, but I know what I'd choose. The contingency plan began with the president calling the widows-to-be and expressing his condolences. Nixon was then to deliver the speech contained in the enclosed memo to the nation. Finally, NASA would terminate radio communications with the moon and leave the astronauts alone to die, after which a clergyman was to commend their souls to the deepest of the deep in fashion of burial at sea, and conclude with the Lord's Prayer. Burials at sea are regularly performed by navies as a traditional burial on the ground is not possible. In both cases, the deceased is buried. Mind you, a burial at sea occurs after they're already dead, not waiting to die. The memo's writer, William Safire, was a public relations executive, radio and television producer, and Army correspondent who joined Nixon in his 1960 presidential race against JFK, and again in Nixon's 1968 re-election campaign. After Nixon's victory, Safire became a writer for the president and Vice President Spiro Agnew. Excuse me. In his 1975 political memoir, Before the Fall, An Inside View of the Pre-Watergate White House, Safire writes, on June 13th, Frank Borman, an astronaut the president liked and whom NASA had assigned to be our liaison, called me to say, you want to be thinking of some alternative posture for the president in the event of mishaps on Apollo 11. When I didn't react promptly, Borman moved off to the formal language, like what to do for the widows. I mean, look, in all honesty, you had to. There's no way you couldn't have. Safire proceeded to draft the enclosed memo for H.R. Haldeman, Nixon's chief of staff. Haldeman would later be a key figure in the Watergate scandal. The smoking gun tapes from June 23rd, 72, 6 days after the Watergate break-ins, is a recorded conversation between Nixon and Haldeman, instructing him to order the CIA to pressure the FBI to drop their Watergate investigation. President Nixon's proposed speech ended with the haunting words intended as a tribute to astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin. For every human being who looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind. These words are a reference of a World War I poem called The Soldier by English poet Rupert Brooke. The 1914 sonnet opens with the words, if I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. Okay, I have heard reference to that. Safire's reference to the soldier refers to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin's patriotism, sacrifice, and final resting place in some corner of another world that is now the eternal ownership of mankind. Fortunately, Nixon's moon disaster memo was never used. Nixon had several other successful communications with Apollo 11 and other missions. The day before the Apollo 11 launch, Nixon sent personal telegrams to the astronauts sharing his pride and excitement. Then, just after an American flag was raised in view of a TV camera, Nixon spoke with the two astronauts through a telephone radio transmission, which he called the most historic phone call ever made from the White House. And honestly, I think even to this day, that might still rank up there. On their return to Earth, the three astronauts spent 3 weeks in confinement before receiving a clean bill of health August 10, 1969. 3 days later, the astronauts began a 45-day giant leap tour, which brought them to over 20 countries. The astronauts spoke before a joint session of Congress, met with Queen Elizabeth II, and were presented with the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Nixon and Agnew, and enjoyed a state dinner with members of Congress, state governors, the U.S. Chief Justice, and ambassadors from 83 countries. That's one heck of a dinner. The story of how a poignant presidential speech never had to be delivered reveals how uncertain space travel was and still remains. Yet for 17 years after the moon landing, many people took the terrible risk of space travel for granted. When the Challenger spacecraft exploded in 1986, with approximately 17% of Americans viewing the explosion live. Wow. President Ronald Reagan had no disaster speech prepared. Reagan's primary speechwriter and special assistant Peggy Noonan quickly wrote a moving address concluding with a sonnet by World War II Royal Canadian Air Force fighter pilot James Gillespie McGee. She wrote about the courageous crew who slipped the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God. Okay. This is the third of 4 documents in the space series. To learn more about the Apollo mission, there's that if you would like to read it. Because space is terrifying, history is awesome, and I actually... this is one of those things I did not know existed, but now that I do know it exists, really not surprised. Because, it was what it was. All right, and that's going to do it for this incredibly long Sunday mail day extravaganza. I don't even know. We're probably close to the 35-minute mark at this point, if not over it. But I want to go back and say thank you to everybody that contributed. My wonderful friend for the early Christmas gifts of Toxie and Garo Yepremian. Philtastic Comics and Art for the book that became the first slab in my collection. Joe Mansman for the absolutely awesome random act of kindness with some incredible looking Pittsburgh cards. And History by Mail just for continuing to make life really, really, really interesting and teach us more. So, that said, enjoy the rest of your Sunday or whenever you happen to be watching this. Go your local sports team. We will see you tomorrow.